When my parents rewrote their will, they cut me out completely. Everything went to my sister and her perfect little family. At our last Sunday dinner, my mom, Lisa, looked me dead in the eyes and said, "We're not wasting our legacy on someone who never built anything." My dad, Ron, just chuckled and raised his glass to my sister, Emma, to the real future of this family. I sat there, my blood turning to ice, forcing a thin, bitter smile. I should have known it would come to this. I'm not stupid. I've seen the way they treat me like an afterthought, a side character in the grand drama of their lives. But seeing them raise their glasses as if I was already dead to them, that hit different. I'm in my early 30s, single, no kids, and I've always been the black sheep. Emma, on the other hand, is the golden child. Married to Dan, 2 kids, house in the suburbs. She's everything they ever wanted. Me, I'm the quiet one. The one who never quite fit their mold. I've always had my own dreams, my own plans, but they never cared about those. I work in tech, pulling long hours, building things they barely understand. But in their eyes, that's not enough. It never has been. That Sunday, the air felt off from the start. Emma and Dan were already at the table laughing with my parents as if they were the only ones who mattered. My dad, grinning like a proud king, clapped Dan on the back as I walked in. "Hey, look who finally showed up," he said, not even bothering to stand. My mom offered a tight smile, already moving back to the kitchen, her way of avoiding actual contact. Dinner was the usual script. Emma's kids running around Dan, talking about his latest promotion, my parents leaning in, soaking up every word. I tried to make small talk, asked my niece about her school project, but she barely looked up from her tablet. Emma shot me a glance, a flicker of annoyance like I was an intruder at my own family's table. Then came the announcement. My dad tapped his glass, the sharp clink cutting through the chatter. He stood up, cleared his throat, and said, "We've made some important decisions about the family's future." My heart sank. I knew where this was going, but I still held my breath, hoping for once I wouldn't be the outsider. "We've updated our will," my mom said, her voice tight but satisfied, like she'd finally crossed off a nagging chore. "We want our legacy to go to those who will truly carry it forward." She looked right at me, her eyes cold and sharp, then turned to Emma. My sister smirked, leaning into Dan, his arm casually draped over her shoulder like a trophy. "You've always been a bit different," my dad added, his words slicing through the air like a cold wind. "Never quite part of the plan." I felt the room tilt, my pulse in my ears. I opened my mouth, but the words caught in my throat. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to walk out and never look back. But instead, I just sat there frozen. Then my dad raised his glass again. To Emma, Dan, and the future of this family. They clinked glasses, their laughter echoing around me, sharp and hollow. I forced a smile, my jaw tight. "Thanks for finally making it clear where I stand," I said, my voice steady but cold. "You'll remember this moment, I promise." I stood up my chair, scraping loudly against the polished hardwood, cutting through their awkward, forced chuckles. I didn't bother grabbing my jacket. I just walked out, the echo of their laughter ringing in my ears as the door slammed behind me. That night, as I lay in bed, the weight of their words settling like stones in my chest, I realized something. I was done being the forgotten son, the outsider. If they wanted a future without me, I'd give them exactly that, but not without a price. They wanted to cut me out, fine. But they were about to learn just how dangerous it is to underestimate the quiet ones. The days that followed felt strange, like I'd crossed some invisible line I could never come back from. I didn't reach out, didn't bother replying to my mom's half-hearted, "Hope you got home safe" text. I let the silence stretch thick and cold the way it always felt when they'd leave me out as a kid, but this time it was my choice. I started remembering all the little slights, the years of being the backup, the second thought, the one they forgot to invite until the last minute. I was the one who had to hear, "Oh, you're here. We didn't think you'd make it," like my presence was a surprise, an inconvenience. I remembered the birthdays when they'd throw Emma these elaborate parties complete with hired clowns and bouncy castles, while my cakes came from the discount aisle still half frozen when they cut the first slice. I remembered Dad taking Emma to her ballet recitals, clapping like a proud parent in the front row, while I'd sit on the sidelines at my soccer games watching other dads cheer. I remembered the first time I brought home a straight A report card, and Dad just glanced at it before saying, "Why aren't you more like Emma? She's always pushing herself." But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about the will. It wasn't even about the money or the houses or the so-called legacy. It was about being erased, about never being seen, never being valued. I was the ghost at their table, the silent shadow they'd never chosen to really know. Then, a few days later, my phone buzzed. It was Emma. I let it ring out, watched her name fade from my screen. A minute later, the message came through. Emma, hey, haven't seen you in a while. Everything okay? I snorted. Classic Emma. Always pretending to care when the cameras were off, always ready to play the role of the loving sister when it suited her. I left her on read. That Sunday, I skipped dinner. I imagined them sitting around their polished mahogany table, Emma's kids probably running circles around the living room, my parents sharing those smug, knowing looks over their glasses of Chardonnay. I wondered if they even noticed I was gone or if they just quietly toasted to their precious real future without me. The silence stretched into weeks. I buried myself in work, taking on extra projects, staying late at the office. It was easier to lose myself in code, to forget the sting of betrayal when I had lines of clean, logical commands in front of me. But at night, the bitterness would creep back in that slow, simmering resentment I'd learned to swallow down over decades. Then one day, I got a call from my dad. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hey, I said, keeping my tone neutral. He cleared his throat, sounding awkward, almost uncertain, like he wasn't used to talking to me outside of forced family gatherings. You doing okay? He asked, his voice a little too casual. I'm fine, I replied, leaning back in my chair, staring out the window at the gray city skyline. Why? There was a pause, the sound of clinking glassware in the background. Probably their latest dinner party, the kind I used to get grudgingly invited to, the ones where I'd stand in the corner nursing a warm beer while my parents bragged about Emma's latest promotion or her kids' honor roll awards. Just checking in, he said finally. We haven't seen you in a bit. I waited, sensing there was more. My dad was never one for small talk, especially not with me. I know things got a bit heated at that last dinner. He continued, his tone dropping into that rehearsed, placating cadence he used whenever he was trying to smooth over a problem without actually addressing it. We just want to make sure you're okay. I let out a short, humorless laugh. You mean after you basically told me I'm not part of the family anymore? Silence. Then a sigh. Look, it's not like that, he said, his tone shifting into that familiar defensive edge. You know, we just have to think about the future, about what's best for everyone. Right? I said, my voice flat. What's best for Emma? Got it. Don't make this about her. He snapped, a sudden sharpness in his voice that made my jaw clench. She's just more involved, that's all. More invested in the family's legacy. You chose a different path. I felt my grip tighten on the phone. You mean the path where I'm not constantly kissing your ass for approval? There was a long, strained pause. I could almost picture his face, that tight, frustrated expression he got when he realized he wasn't going to get his way. I'd seen it 1,000 times, usually just before he stormed out of a room or cut me off mid-sentence. Look, he said, finally, his tone icy now, all pretense of concern stripped away. Just think about what you want. If you want to be part of this family, you have to start acting like it. I hung up without another word, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. I stood there for a moment, staring at the dark screen, my own reflection ghostly in the glass. That was the moment it truly hit me. They didn't just cut me out of the will. They'd cut me out of their lives long before that. I just hadn't realized it until now. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something shift inside me. Not just anger, not just resentment, but a cold, calculated clarity. If they wanted to draw lines, I'd let them. But they'd regret ever thinking they could write me out of their story. After that call, I felt something inside me harden. It was like a switch flipped, and I realized I didn't owe them anything. Not my time, not my patience, and definitely not my loyalty. If they wanted me out, fine, but I wasn't going quietly. I started doing some digging. My parents' little real estate empire had always been their pride and joy, the thing they clung to as proof that they'd built something. I remembered Dad's endless lectures about property values and passive income, his smug satisfaction whenever he talked about his investments. But I also remembered the whispers at family gatherings, the tense phone calls I'd overhear when he thought no one was listening, the muttered complaints about rising taxes and nightmare tenants. It didn't take long to find the cracks. A quick check of public records revealed one of their flagship properties, a modest apartment complex on the edge of town, was behind on property taxes. Not by a lot, but enough to raise eyebrows. Curious, I took a drive out there one rainy Saturday. The place looked rough. Overgrown grass, peeling paint, a flickering for rent sign leaning awkwardly against the front gate. A few tenants gave me curious glances as I walked around my hoodie pulled up against the drizzle. One of them, an older guy in a stained baseball cap, leaned against the railing, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. "You here for the landlord?" he asked, exhaling a thin stream of smoke. "No, just checking the place out," I said casually. "You live here?" He snorted a bitter sound. "For now. If they don't fix the damn heat soon, I'm out. Place has been falling apart for months." I nodded, filing that away. I didn't linger, didn't push for more info. Just snapped a few photos with my phone and made a mental note to dig deeper when I got home. Back at my apartment, I spent hours going through public records, cross-referencing property deeds, tax filings, and business registrations. It was a tangled web, but one thread kept coming up. Curtis, my sister's husband, had recently been added to the LLC that owned the complex. I found a notice of tax delinquency in his name, a fat red stamp at the top, warning of impending penalties if the balance wasn't paid. I felt a slow, dangerous smile spread across my face. They'd cut me out, written me off as a non-factor, but they hadn't bothered to lock the doors behind them. They'd given Curtis control over a sinking ship, and from the looks of it, he was already struggling to keep it afloat. I decided to play the long game. I started small calling in a few favors, talking to friends who worked in city planning and code enforcement. I learned the complex had been hit with multiple code violations in the past year. Everything from faulty wiring to mold in the basement units. Curtis had been trying to handle it, but the fines were piling up and the city was getting restless. Over the next few weeks, I started dropping hints to a few of the more disgruntled tenants. Just casual conversations in passing, a little nudge here, a suggestion there. "You know the city has a tenant rights hotline. They might be able to help if your landlord's not taking care of the place." I even printed out a few flyers and slipped them under doors when no one was looking. It didn't take long for the pressure to mount. I watched from a distance as the complaints started rolling in. Broken heaters, leaking roofs, rodent infestations. I heard through a mutual friend that Curtis had been scrambling, spending sleepless nights trying to patch the cracks before the city inspectors came back for a follow-up. But it was too late. I'd already set the wheels in motion. One afternoon, I got a call from my mom. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was tight-strained. "We need to talk," she said, her tone clipped. "There's some confusion with one of the properties. Call me back." I didn't. A few days later, I got a text from Emma. "Just a single line, we need to talk." I ignored it. Then Curtis called, his voice sharp and annoyed. "Listen, I know you've been stirring up trouble. Just back off, okay? You have no idea what you're messing with." I felt a cold thrill run down my spine. He was panicking. "Good. I have no idea," I said, my voice calm. "Pretty sure I know exactly what I'm doing. You might want to check your mail." I hung up before he could respond, feeling the adrenaline course through me. I'd just mailed a detailed anonymous complaint to the city, complete with photos of the cracked walls, exposed wiring, and rat droppings I'd spotted on my visit. I knew it would take a few days to hit, but when it did, it would be like dropping a match in a room full of gasoline. A week later, I heard through the grapevine that the city had slapped them with a fat stack of fines and a stern warning to bring the property up to code or face possible foreclosure. Curtis's name was all over the paperwork. He'd tried to be the big man, the heir to my parents' so-called legacy, and he'd already fumbled the ball. That night, I poured myself a glass of whiskey, leaned back in my chair, and watched the city lights flicker through my window. They wanted to cut me out, to erase me from their story. Fine. But they were about to learn that sometimes the outsider is the one holding all the cards. The fallout from my little push came quicker than I expected. I could almost feel the tension rippling through my family's tight little circle like a hairline crack spreading through glass. Curtis must have been sweating bullets, scrambling to plug the holes in his sinking ship, but it was too late. I had already loosened the bolts. It started with the tenants. A few of them, the ones I'd nudged in the right direction, filed formal complaints. The city took notice, and a few days later, code enforcement officers started making regular visits. They slapped bright orange violation notices on the front gates, warning of potential fines and mandatory repairs. Curtis tried to handle it. I'll give him that. He was always the smooth talker, the guy with the polished smile and the carefully rehearsed handshake. But property management is messy, unforgiving work, and he'd clearly underestimated just how bad things had gotten. Then came the real hit. I heard from a buddy in finance that Curtis had tried to secure a quick cash injection to cover the fines and pay off the contractors he'd hastily hired to patch up the worst of the damage. But the bank wasn't having it. They'd pulled his credit, taken one look at the sinking numbers, and told him to kick rocks. Around that time, my parents must have realized something was up because I started getting texts from my mom again. The messages had shifted from polite concern to thinly veiled desperation. Mom, call me. It's important. Mom, you need to come over. We need to talk. Mom, don't ignore us. Family comes first. I ignored them all, letting the notifications pile up on my screen like the junk mail they were. I knew what she wanted. A lifeline, a way to rope me back into their carefully curated little world now that their golden boy was floundering. But I wasn't interested in playing the savior. A week later, I got a call from Emma. It rang once, twice, 3 times. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, my phone buzzed with her message. Hey, it's me. We need to talk. I don't know what's going on, but things are getting complicated. Just call me, okay? I played it back twice, savoring the tight, worried edge in her voice. Emma, the golden child, the perfect daughter, was finally feeling the pressure. I wondered if she still thought it was funny to toast to my exclusion at family dinners, if she still found it so easy to ignore my presence. Then about a week later, things escalated. I was sitting at my desk, half listening to a project meeting on Zoom, when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I muted the call, thinking it was just another telemarketer, but a few seconds later, the same number popped up again. This time I picked up. Hello? There was a brief pause, then a gruff voice came on the line. Is this Alex Carter? Speaking, I said, leaning back in my chair, curious. This is John Kessler from the City Code Enforcement Office. I'm calling about a series of complaints we've received concerning a property linked to your family. I wanted to confirm some details. I felt a slow, wicked smile spread across my face. They had no idea I was behind the initial complaints. Sure, what do you need to know? He asked a few routine questions. Had I been to the property recently? Did I have any insight into its condition? Had I heard any complaints from tenants? I played it cool, offering just enough to seem helpful without giving anything away. I appreciate your cooperation, he said finally, his tone gruff but polite. We'll be conducting a more thorough inspection next week. If you hear anything else, don't hesitate to reach out. Of course, I said, struggling to keep the grin out of my voice. Happy to help. As soon as I hung up, I felt a fresh wave of satisfaction wash over me. Curtis was in deep and the cracks were spreading. I wondered if he'd told my parents yet, if they even knew just how close they were to losing one of their prized assets. Then a few days later, I got the confirmation I'd been waiting for. My mom called, her voice tight with panic, the controlled, icy tone she used whenever she was trying to mask fear. Alex, we need to talk, she said, not even bothering with pleasantries. There's a situation with one of the properties. It's complicated. I leaned back in my chair, propping my feet up on my desk. Oh, what kind of situation? She hesitated, and I could almost hear her mentally weighing how much to share. The city's threatening to fine us, maybe even shut the place down if we don't make some urgent repairs. Curtis was supposed to handle it, but things have gotten out of hand. I let the silence stretch, enjoying the discomfort on her end. Sounds rough, I said, finally keeping my tone flat. It's not just rough, she snapped, her composure cracking for a moment. It's serious. If they shut the place down, we stand to lose a lot. I felt a dark, twisted thrill at her words. I could almost picture her sitting at the kitchen counter, her perfectly manicured nails tapping anxiously against the marble, her mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Well, I said, letting the words hang in the air, maybe you should have thought about that before cutting me out. She sucked in a sharp breath, clearly not expecting me to throw their betrayal back in her face. Alex, this is not the time to be petty. I chuckled, the sound bitter and sharp. Not petty, Mom, just practical. You made it clear I'm not part of the family's future, so figure it out yourselves. I hung up before she could respond, my heart racing, my hands trembling slightly as I set my phone down. I knew I'd just crossed a line, but I didn't care. I wasn't their safety net anymore, and it felt damn good to finally say it out loud. As I leaned back in my chair, staring at the city skyline outside my window, I felt a strange, unfamiliar calm settle over me. They'd cut me out, erased me, tried to make me invisible. But I was done being the forgotten son. Now they'd have to deal with the fallout. The week after that call felt like the calm before a storm. I knew my family was scrambling, that Curtis was probably running himself ragged, trying to salvage his crumbling empire, but I didn't reach out. I just watched from the sidelines, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It didn't take long. One evening, as I was heading home from work, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Dan, my brother-in-law. Dan, we need to talk, now. I ignored it. 5 minutes later, another text came through. Emma, I don't know what's going on, but you're making things worse. Just pick up the phone. I let that one slide too, enjoying the small satisfaction of leaving them on red for once. I wasn't their backup plan anymore, their fallback option. If they wanted to ignore me when things were good, they could figure out their own mess now that the cracks were showing. Later that night, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I checked the peephole. My stomach twisted when I saw Emma standing on my doorstep, her face pale, eyes wide and frantic. She was clutching her phone in one hand, her knuckles white against the polished metal. I hesitated, my first instinct to just ignore her, but curiosity got the better of me. I cracked the door open, leaning against the frame. "What do you want? Can we talk?" she said, her voice trembling, a thin edge of desperation threading through her usually confident tone. I sighed, stepping back to let her in. She stumbled over the threshold like she was half expecting me to slam the door in her face. I almost did. She paced my small living room, her eyes darting around like she expected me to have the walls lined with evidence of my quiet sabotage. I watched her for a moment, arms crossed my face, carefully blank. "What's this about Emma?" I said, finally leaning back against the kitchen counter, keeping a deliberate distance. She turned to face me, her eyes wide and pleading. "I don't know what you did, but you need to stop. You're ruining everything." I felt a small, sharp thrill at her words. I hadn't seen her this rattled in years. The golden child, the perfect daughter, the one who always had the upper hand, finally shaken. "What exactly am I ruining?" I asked, my tone calm, almost bored. She hesitated, chewing her lower lip, clearly struggling to find the right words. "The apartments," she said, finally, her voice dropping to a frantic whisper. "Curtis is losing control. The city is breathing down our necks, tenants are threatening to sue, and the fines keep piling up." I raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "Sounds like poor management to me." She shot me a sharp, furious look, her hands balling into fists. "Don't play dumb, Alex. I know you're behind this. The complaints, the inspections, the sudden interest from the city, it's too much of a coincidence." I smirked, enjoying the rare sight of my sister off balance. "I'm just minding my business, Emma. Maybe Curtis should have done the same." She stepped closer, her eyes flashing with a mixture of anger and fear. "You're seriously going to let this happen? Just stand by while everything Dad built falls apart?" I felt my jaw clench, a sudden sharp flare of old resentment tightening in my chest. I straightened, meeting her gaze head on. "You mean the same legacy I was cut out of, the one you all toasted to while you left me out in the cold?" She flinched, her bravado slipping for just a second, a flicker of something like guilt flashing across her face. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by the same stubborn arrogance I'd grown up despising. "Fine," she spat, her voice low and bitter. "Be petty, burn it all down, but don't come crawling back when you realize you've destroyed your own family." I chuckled, a harsh, bitter sound. "I'm not the one crawling, Emma, and I'm definitely not the one destroying this family. You all did that the moment you chose to cut me out." She opened her mouth to say something, but I held up a hand, cutting her off. "You made it clear I'm not part of this family's future, so don't come crying to me now that your perfect little world is crumbling." For a moment, we just stood there, the air between us crackling with old grudges and unspoken words. Then she turned on her heel, yanking the door open with a force that rattled the frame. She didn't look back as she stormed out, the sound of her footsteps echoing down the hallway until the front door slammed shut behind her. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the door, my pulse racing, my hands trembling slightly. I knew I'd just crossed a line, that there was no coming back from this. But I didn't care. I poured myself a drink, settling into the worn leather of my couch, the icy burn of whiskey sliding down my throat as I leaned back, closing my eyes. I felt strangely calm, the weight of years of resentment lifting from my chest. They'd wanted to erase me, to cut me out of their lives, to rewrite their legacy without me. Fine, let them see what that really looks like. They'd made their choice. Now they'd have to live with the consequences. The storm I'd set in motion hit harder than I expected. Within days, the cracks in their little empire started to spread, and the entire structure came dangerously close to collapsing. The first real blow landed when I heard through a mutual contact that Curtis's main property, the one I'd nudged the city to inspect, had been slapped with a massive fine, one big enough to knock a hole in their finances. The tenants had banded together demanding immediate repairs, and several had already started withholding rent. Curtis was on the hook for tens of thousands in back taxes, and his frantic attempts to secure a quick loan had backfired, pushing his credit into the red. Then I got a call from my mother. I hesitated for a moment before answering, half curious, half amused. "Alex," she said, her voice tight, the thin veneer of composure she'd always prided herself on clearly slipping. "We need to talk. It's about the properties." I leaned back in my chair, my gaze drifting to the flickering city lights outside my apartment window. "What about them?" She hesitated, clearly weighing her words. Things have gotten complicated. Curtis is in over his head. The city is threatening to pull the rental licenses, and if that happens, we'll lose everything. I bit back a laugh. So this was what desperation sounded like. I could almost see her sitting at the polished marble kitchen counter, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping nervously against her wine glass. Maybe you should have thought of that before cutting me out, I said, letting a thin thread of satisfaction seep into my voice. Alex, don't be childish, she snapped, her tone sharp. This isn't just about you. It's about the family, about everything we've worked for. I let out a low, humorless chuckle. Oh, now it's about family. Funny how that only matters when you need something. There was a long, strained silence on the other end, and for a moment I thought she might hang up. But then she spoke, her voice tight with forced patience. Look, we made a mistake, okay? Things got out of hand. But we can fix this. We just need your help. I felt my jaw tighten, the years of resentment, the countless slights and dismissals all bubbling to the surface. I'd been the outsider for so long, the forgotten son, the one they only remembered when it was convenient. No, I said, my voice cold final. You made your choice. You wanted to cut me out to toast to your perfect little family without me. So figure it out yourselves. Alex, please, she said, her voice breaking, a thin, desperate note slipping through the cracks. We can't do this without you. I closed my eyes, letting the words hang in the air, savoring the power shift, the slow, satisfying reversal of roles. Maybe you should have thought of that before you decided I wasn't part of your legacy. I hung up, my heart pounding, my hands shaking slightly as I set my phone down on the glass coffee table. I stared at it for a long moment, half expecting her to call back to try again, to plead for a second chance. But the phone stayed silent. Over the next few days, the messages started coming in. First from Emma, then from Dan, then from a few of our distant cousins. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly pretending to care, suddenly desperate to reconnect. Emma, we need to talk. This is serious. Dan bro, just pick up the phone. We can work this out. Mom, Alex, please. I know we've had our differences, but this is bigger than that. I ignored them all, letting the messages pile up, each one a little more frantic, a little more desperate than the last. I could almost feel the panic radiating through the screen, the growing realization that their perfect little world was on the verge of collapse. Then one evening, I got a knock at my door. I hesitated, my heart suddenly racing, a cold knot of dread forming in my stomach. I walked over, checked the peephole, and felt my jaw tighten. It was my dad. I took a deep breath, steeling myself before pulling the door open. He stood there, his face pale, his eyes sunken, looking years older than the last time I'd seen him. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off before he could get a word out. What do you want? I said, my voice flat, my expression carefully blank. He flinched, clearly not expecting the cold reception. He hesitated, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. We need to talk, he said, finally, his voice rough, strained. I have nothing to say to you, I replied, moving to shut the door. Wait, he said, his hand shooting out to stop the door from closing. Please, just hear me out. I paused, my grip tightening on the doorframe, my heart pounding in my chest. I stared at him for a long moment, my mind racing, the old familiar ache of betrayal twisting in my gut. Fine, I said, finally stepping back and letting the door swing open. But make it quick. He stepped inside, his shoulders hunched, his gaze darting nervously around my apartment like he was afraid of what he might find. I know we screwed up, he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. I know we took you for granted, that we made you feel like an outsider. But we need you, Alex. I need you. I felt a sharp, bitter laugh rise in my throat, but I forced it back. My jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. You need me. Now, I said, my voice cold, unfeeling. But where were you when I needed you? When you were toasting to my exclusion? When you cut me out of your will? When you made it clear I wasn't part of your precious family? He looked down, his shoulders slumping, the weight of years of neglect and arrogance finally catching up to him. For the first time in my life, I saw him for what he really was. A small, frightened man clinging to a crumbling legacy he no longer had the strength to hold together. I'm sorry, he said finally, his voice breaking, his eyes shining with the beginnings of tears. I'm so sorry. I let the silence stretch, the words hanging in the air between us like a cold, bitter fog. Then I took a deep breath, stepped back, and closed the door in his face. As the sound of his retreating footsteps echoed down the hallway, I felt a strange, unfamiliar sense of peace settle over me. I'd finally taken back my power, reclaimed my place in my own story. They'd tried to cut me out, to erase me, to write me off. but in the end, I was the one who walked away. Story 2. When my ex disappeared with our child. I pleaded with my parents to cover my legal bills. My dad scoffed. Why even bother? The stable one is her. You have always been a complete failure. Subsequently, I learned that they had been covertly inviting her to family dinners when I addressed them at last. My mom said, glancing at me, "We wish we had a daughter like her. You're a complete mess. We've finished the rescue." I simply grinned and replied, "You understand? Do not be concerned. I will no longer be a burden for you," and departed. I made a choice a year later. They didn't see coming. Now they call every night. Please don't abandon us. Okay, so this actually started with something kind of stupid. Just a little thing that felt off, and I guess I should have seen it as a warning, but hindsight, etc. Anyway, I'm Walker 32, been through a divorce for about a year and a half now. Got a daughter, Lori. She's 7, smart as hell, like slime, and those weird YouTube short with cats that fall off counters. My ex, Samantha, we split because we clashed nonstop. Not some cheating scandal or whatever, just, she's organized. She likes spreadsheets and meal preps and joining the PTA. I'm more. I guess my mom would say I'm casual to a fault, but whatever. I get stuff done, just not the way they like. So for context, my parents live like 20 minutes from the old suburb house with a garage. My dad never parks in because it's full of boxes. They're boringly normal, but always had this thing where Samantha could do no wrong. And I was the project. Like I was just born to disappoint them or something. I'm not even exaggerating. My dad's the type who'd say, it's not personal, it's just reality. And then list every time I did something wrong when I was a kid. Like who retains that information in their brain anyway? So the craziness starts when I pick up Lori for the weekend. This is like early spring and she's behaving really formal, way more courteous than normal, and continues saying stuff like, Granny says you need to fold the towels right, and Mama claims you're not excellent at keeping things clean. I'm simply like, yeah, whatever. Maybe Samantha's complaining at home and Lori's parroting it, but it kind really stings. Not going to lie. Then after I drop Lori back to Samantha's, I start getting texts from my mom. But they're all just memes and TikToks. Nothing about Laurier. And then abruptly, nothing for a week. Which is unusual, since typically she'll at least inquire whether I've fed Lori anything with food dye. She's certain red dye is harmful. So I send a couple SMS. Get nothing, not panicked yet, just annoyed. Then Samantha texts me saying she's bringing Lori to see family for a couple weeks. It'll be excellent for her. I ask whose family, she just says my. I know her sister lives out of state, so I'm thinking, all right, I imagine they're on a road trip. Whatever. Maybe she needs a getaway from our town. I'm not delighted, but I'm not going to create a battle over one trip. I phone my mom again, ask if she's heard from Samantha since Lori left her favorite drink at my apartment, and now I get a thumbs up. A simple thumbs up. That's all. Go ahead. About 11 days have passed. Lori isn't even texting me, which is unusual, and it's making me a bit anxious. Samantha doesn't answer when I call her. I go directly to voicemail when I contact my mom. I begin to wonder whether they're all upset with me because of anything I'd done, but I'm at a loss for ideas. I ask my father whether he is aware of the situation. He provides me with a link to an uncommented news item on dads who are not present. Funny, huh? One evening at home, I'm looking through our family group chat when I come across an odd new picture. My mom never uploads pictures, for example. She often gripes about how difficult it is to upload them. However, a picture of their supper table is included this time. Everyone is working on it. Samantha is sitting close to my mom, and Lori is eating macaroni and cheese with her. I have not been tagged. Nothing. Just the picture with the caption, smiley face. I can't tell if it's ancient or not, so I really gaze at it for a good minute. However, it appears to be recent when I look at the new placemats I purchased my mother for her birthday. I begin to assemble it. They aren't in a different state. My parents' house is where they are. They had been holding family dinners for a long time without even informing me. Hand on Samantha's shoulder, my mother says, comfortable. My father pours wine. The entire situation feels phony, yet it's also clearly real. I look up to make sure I didn't miss anything, but I didn't. There was no mention of Lori or Samantha visiting, just a picture as if it were completely typical. Did you mean to send that? Is what I text my mother. I text her again after she leaves me on read. Straighter. Lori and Samantha are staying with you then. Nothing. I give my dad a try. He just gives me a thumbs down. I'm becoming angry now, not even concealing it. I go directly to voicemail when I call. The next day I make the drive. I'm done speculating, so just show up. I press the bell. After opening the door, my dad simply stands there. Doesn't even shift to give me access. Simply asks, "Walker, what do you want?" As if I were a stranger. "Where's Lori?" I ask. "Samantha, where are you?" He simply shrugs. "I should have figured it out by now," she says. "Here with people who genuinely care, they are safe. I want to speak with my daughter. He believes I might be able to earn the right if I first get my act together." I push by him then. Not difficult, but sufficient. Samantha is in the kitchen too. She seems as though she is anticipating a battle. Lori is coloring at the table. I see my mother at the sink. "Why did Samantha lie?" I ask. "I didn't," she claims. Simply said I never ask the appropriate question. Lori needs stability, not upheaval, my mother argues. Every other weekend. My father is simply standing at the doorway. Crossed arms. "You have all been deceiving me," I say. "I'm not worth including you, just determined." My mother doesn't even bat an eye, only expresses our fatigue. "Walker, you add drama. You bring chaos. We finished saving you." I inquire as to if they are actually excluding me from my own family because of her. Samantha is the daughter they wish they had, she adds with a little grin. "I'm just a wreck," she adds. The rescue is over. What I did next is not something I'm proud of. However, I slapped my fist on the table, causing Lori to jump. Samantha then got up and placed a hand on Lori's shoulder as if I were a threat. My dad claims I'm creating a scene and urges me to go. "You got it," I ask. "Do not be concerned. I won't be a problem for you." I pick up my keys and leave. The voice of my mother follows me. "I always do this," she says. "Make me the center of attention." As I leave, I slam the door. I attempt to phone Samantha on the way home. No response. I inform her via text that I would want to speak with Lori. A few hours later, she responds, "Maybe I should give everyone space because Lori is too tired." I give my parents another chance. Nothing. Nothing but quiet. It's been a few days now, and the only communication I've had is from my father, who has sent me another article on how to leave toxic families. Very amusing. No one else even knows I'm here. I'm already making arrangements, but I have no clue how long they want to do this. They want me to be shut out. All right, I will not simply sit here and accept it. I admit that I'm not flawless, but this is very amazing. I'm not sure yet what I'll do, but I'm not going to let them get away with this. They wish to treat me as though I were a walking mess, as if I were only an issue that they could eliminate. Yes, let's see. I've had enough of being kind. We'll provide an update if anything emerges. However, I'm available to anyone who wants to call my family members crazy or who has suggestions. One update. Okay, I promised to update, but to be honest, I nearly didn't since I thought there was no purpose. Although Reddit can't solve my family's problems, it does help to put it in writing. So, let's get started. As you may have missed my last article, my ex-girlfriend Samantha took my daughter Lori and rather than visiting her own family, ended up staying at my parents' house, which they all kept a secret from my own parents. When I challenged them, they told me I was a complete disaster. Samantha is the daughter they wish they had and nothing new there. I assured them they wouldn't have to deal with me again, slammed the door, and walked out. I meant it. Here's the deal then. I suppose no one expects you to truly vanish when you're the disaster son. However, I did. I stopped making calls, sending texts, and doing the many small tasks that go unnoticed until you stop doing them. I've always been the one people call for the bothersome things. So at first, it seemed strange. Changing the smoke alarm batteries, resetting the Wi-Fi, fixing TV problems, and collecting up items when they forgot I just didn't arrive. I can't make it, not even to apologize. The first week, nothing. Nothing at all other than my dad giving me a motivational saying about letting go of negativity, which is okay. To be honest, I was hoping for an apology or at least a note regarding Lori, but nothing came through. My mom's phone is actually where Lori texted me. I responded quickly with only a few emoticons and a photo of her painting. However, my mother took over and wrote that Lori was doing well at the moment and that they would let me know if she needed anything. After a while, things started to change a little, but I still wanted to hurl my phone out the window. It was my father. He texted first asking if you could visit this weekend. Once more, the garage door is jammed. I let him read. He attempted to contact. I didn't answer. My mother tried the following day. My phone was acting up, she remarked. I had to set up her new tablet for her. Somehow she forgot her Apple ID. Ignore it once more. Isabella. My sister resides in a different state. Hardly ever speaks to any of us since the drama of the divorce. About 3 days later, I received a text inquiring how I was doing since my mother was worried about my password. I'm fine, just busy, I said. It's amazing how quickly people notice when you don't do the things they want you to do, but they never show gratitude when you do it. Then I suppose things became more desperate. My father, who seldom leaves voicemails, left one, requesting permission to drop by for 5 minutes. It's not really important. I removed it. Petty, I know, but whatever. I was still furious. They probably thought I'd give in eventually, but I didn't. I began mentally compiling a record of all the occasions I sacrificed everything for them, and they simply brushed it off as if it didn't exist. One evening, Samantha attempted to phone me. I figured it was about Lori, so I picked it up, but she just started talking. Your mother is concerned. Just have a conversation with her. Louis is under stress, so I interrupted her. Told her that because I was obviously not involved, they could deal with their own issues if they wanted a family. She hung up after becoming irate and about to say something else. Later, she texted me to say Lori wanted to see me, but I informed her that I would only speak with Lori directly without using a parent-approved filter. That didn't sit well with her. In any case. After about 2 weeks, my parents began to think outside the box. I promised to help my mom with some insurance paperwork, and she reminded me of that. I didn't say that. She simply made an assumption. Next, she attempted to instill guilt by saying something along the lines of, "Family doesn't just walk away when it gets hard." I answered, "You seem to be doing well." She emailed me a lengthy article on how nobody is perfect after leaving me on red for a day, and we must all be able to forgive at times. I didn't respond. As I read the receipts, I could see their reaction change from annoyance to fear. My dad started emailing me about things I haven't even done in years, like where the old snow shovels are or what happened to the extra key to their house. This is the bit that truly made me giggle. After that, he messaged me to ask if I could simply check the gutters. I haven't lived there for ages, man. Like, figure it out. However, I am aware that they are not defenseless. They simply dislike having to carry out tasks on their own, or heaven forbid, seek assistance from others. My father detests having to pay for anything. Despite the fact that he frequently breaks it, he believes he can mend himself. I let it go since my mom is too ashamed to call a neighbor. To gain some tranquility, I temporarily blocked their numbers. Madison, a mutual acquaintance, then contacted me. My parents were concerned that I was intentionally hurting them, so she's usually in the center of all this since she's friends with Samantha and my mother. As though I had simply informed Madison that I had no time for drama because I was busy. According to her, my dad bent the track when attempting to fix the garage door, so they are now unable to open it at all and must park in the driveway. Sounds like a them problem, I remarked. She also chuckled. She clearly felt I was being chilly, though. In any case, then the financial difficulties began. After blocking her old phone and calling me from a different one, my mom stated she didn't understand the new website for her bank and didn't want to bother Samantha because she already had enough on her plate. You'll figure it out, I merely said. She became upset, broke down in tears, and accused me of being unkind. I ended the call. It may sound cruel, but I couldn't bring myself to care after what they did. I also ceased doing their tax-related tasks. I usually assist them in organizing receipts and completing the necessary paperwork, but this year I just did not. About that, my dad texted me 3 times. I walked away. He detests handling those things, I know that. Well, anything. He even gave my sister a call about it. She informed me later, but she just stated that he should probably pay someone to handle his taxes because she doesn't know how to do them. I don't trust outsiders, he remarked. Traditional. The nicest thing, though, is that Samantha tried to use guilt to get me to watch Lori because she thought it would be better for her. She stated she had to go when she phoned. May I have Lori for tonight? Yes, I replied. As long as Lori and I are alone. No invitation to my parents' place for a family meal. She became irritated and accused me of complicating matters. That's what I said. It's not my issue. She ended the call. My mom messaged me the next day telling me that genuine dads take charge and that I was self-centered for not assisting Samantha. Real families don't stab you in the back, I said. She didn't respond. Now, about a month has passed since that major outburst, and they're all playing the villain, but I'm simply letting them face the repercussions of their own decisions. I didn't answer the door when my dad tried to arrive at my house. After knocking for around 5 minutes, he departed. People were simply standing there, seeming bewildered, but I could see him through them. It's not my issue. Although I feel sorry for Lori since she didn't ask for any of this, I'm not going to allow them to use me as a pawn to pull me back in. When I can, I email her simple things like hilarious memes or park photos, and she responds with brief texts. However, my mom always interrupts and attempts to steer the discussion. To get around that, I began writing her letters instead. It's old school, yet effective. The atmosphere right now is really weird. Everyone is upset that I'm not addressing their problems, and nobody understands how to repair anything. I'm not claiming to be flawless, but I'm not allowing people to take advantage of me any longer. Although I am aware that my parents treat me as though I would constantly make mistakes, I genuinely believe that they enjoy having someone to place the blame on. They were never very fond of my methods. They believe everything Samantha does is fantastic, and I'm not as tidy or well-organized as she is. I suppose it's simpler for them to accuse me of being at fault than to acknowledge their own mistakes. In any case, for once, I'm just keeping my head down and letting them handle their own issue. I'm just going about my day, not taking calls or reading their texts of remorse. And when their disaster isn't there to patch everything up, it's amazing how quickly the steady family disintegrates. I haven't finished yet. By no means. I'm thinking about more. They want my departure. All right, we'll see how they feel about it. A messier situation will prompt another update. Update 2, however. Okay, fasten your seatbelt. Things truly start to get ugly at this point. Not only in my imagination, but also in the real world, where people are genuinely angry rather than using passive-aggressive English, and there is money and paperwork. I had assumed that ignoring them would be sufficient, but it turns out that when you're the catastrophe, you have to work hard. They believe that they would be better off without. I'm not complaining, mind you. I have had enough of their cocky little gang over there behaving as though I was preventing them from moving forward. So good. When I quit holding things up for you, we'll see how you handle it. The strangest part is that it all began with a letter. Not an email, but a real document. It arrives at my mailbox. Aside from my name and my parents' address, which is really strange considering I haven't lived there in years, it seemed like one of those dull statements you toss out. Crack it open. It's a notification regarding their property taxes, but I'm labeled as the major co-signer because I assisted them in refinancing following their divorce. They never bothered to update anything, thus evidently my information is still attached to their house things, even though I honestly forgot about it. It's time to rectify that, I think. I start searching through all the previous files and logins, and it's a disaster. Because I don't want to be financially dependent on people who can't even text me when my own child is at their house. For example, they never alter the passwords I created for them 3 years ago. I used to assist them with internet banking, so I look over their bank account information when it was initially converted to digital. Yes, I am aware that I sound elderly, but whatever. Additionally, see that they have a few bills. It wasn't much, but enough that the city warned them. I start removing my information from everything I can and resetting every password associated with my name. The bank has to be called. Complete forms and exchange emails. It's annoying. While I'm doing this, my dad calls. I disregard the message he leaves stating that he needs assistance with some essential papers. The greatest thing is that when I notify the bank that I would like to no longer be a co-signer, they say that I must get everyone to sign off. I just send the paperwork to my parents along with a sticky note that reads, "Sign these or the bank will keep calling you because they are still in denial mode. I will no longer be your fallback option." I got a text from my mom asking if this was really necessary. I don't respond. My father attempts to contact. I hit decline. They eventually send them back after a few days. Just their signatures, no remark. At the bank, I dropped them off. Completed. This is where the fun begins, because their credit isn't as good without me as a trustworthy co-signer. Their mortgage payment goes up a little, and all of a sudden they are receiving all these extra fees. It's not huge, but enough that my dad texts me upset over unforeseen expenses. I simply let him read. They made it apparent that they didn't want me in the family unless I was cleaning up their mess so they could clean up their own, which I realize is selfish. Samantha is trying to be nice with me about one of those old shared responsibilities in the meanwhile. We took out a joint loan for some house renovations when we got married. It was her idea, not mine. Additionally, because she is too busy to handle it, I continued to ensure that payments were made even after the divorce. After all the turmoil, I now receive a notification that the payment was unsuccessful and that we would be assessed a late charge. "Can you handle it this month?" She texts me. It's tight. I just tell her to talk to her new family and give her a meme that reads, "Not my circus, not my monkeys." She becomes irate and accuses me of being immature, but I simply silence her. A few days later, my mother calls to tell me that Lori is seeing Samantha's tension, that I ought to volunteer and assist. I just state that I will pay my debt to my child. That's all. She ends the call. The next day, I begin receiving calls from unfamiliar numbers. As it happens, the bank is attempting to collect the past due loan from me. At last, I give them a call and request that they divide the account. I will pay my share, but I will no longer be covering for anybody else. Even though the paperwork is a complete mess, I persevere until I finish my portion. I send Samantha and my parents the remainder and tell them to work it out on their own. To be honest, the repercussions is rather hilarious. When my dad knocks on my door and accuses me of wrecking the family's finances, I just remind him that he can try doing it all by himself for once if he so chooses. He makes an effort to push past me. He shoves me as I block the door. He rushes off cursing after I shove him straight back. Later, my mother texts me, claims that I made my father feel ashamed. It's not my problem, I simply say. My sister Isabella phones and accuses me of being cruel, but I tell her that because she is seldom present, she has no idea what is truly happening. After that, she remains silent. Then without warning, I began receiving emails about strange things like the city threatening to shut off something at my parents' house and the power bill not being paid. They always thought I would just log in and pay for it, I suppose. Since years ago when I set up all the auto-pay features, I go in and shut my accounts, remove my payment information, and stop any automatic payments. It's all on them now. "You're gone too far," my dad says in a text message. I just give a thumbs up. Here's the really bad part. School calls. I'm still on their emergency contact list since no one came to get her. Following an early dismissal. I arrive with Samantha, the grabber tech. She claims that she believed my mother was pursuing her. "I suppose you ought to consult your network of support." She becomes irate and ends the call. Lori slams the door after I take her out for ice cream and then drop her off with Samantha. Mom texts and wonders why I wasn't able to assist again. I don't respond. In other words, the family's steady side is beginning to break. Samantha is upset with my mother for her lack of assistance. The mounting debts are the reason my dad is upset with everyone. My mother is sending me lengthy SMS about family togetherness and guilt-tripping everyone. As they attempt to sort out the mess they created for themselves, I'm just relaxing. It may sound trivial, but I don't even regret their decision. They now have to deal with it, but I'm not finished. Sincerely, you become weary of constantly being the fallback option, even if I know people will accuse me of being cold or whatever. They treated me like a complete mess, but now they can see how resilient I was for them. When they have to handle all the dirty labor themselves, we'll see how long stability lasts. For them, I have one more thing planned. I'm kind of anticipating something that they won't see coming at all. They want my removal from their life. Cool. I'm glad to comply. When the final bit drops, we'll provide an update. The last update. That being said, this is the final one. I genuinely don't care about their drama anymore, not because everything is tied up or anything. All I wanted to see was how they would react when they understood how serious I was. They acted as though I were some storm they had finally weathered for the entire year. They're the ones standing by themselves in the rain now. No excuses, no reconciliation. Fair repercussions. At last it began with my mother sending a strange group text. She doesn't actually utilize group messages. She consistently makes mistakes and sends items to the incorrect person. I nearly didn't open it at all. It's really simply a list of things that she, my dad, and Samantha need assistance with. Lawn maintenance. Something about taxes. Once more, my dad's phone locked out. Lori, project for school, in a single paragraph, like as using no punctuation. I didn't respond. I suppose they assumed I would simply go back to being an assistant, haha. At first, they only called once a week, but later, Mom left voicemails every night, which were scattered everywhere. She would occasionally sound angry and even weep. She would occasionally talk as if nothing were wrong. At first, Dad tried to be harsh, said that I was behaving like a kid, then changed to this. Your family depends on you. Samantha usually texted about Lori, but there was always a hint that I was to blame. It was difficult. Isabella. I didn't react. In fact, I received a message from my sister out of the blue. She hasn't really been involved at all, but all of a sudden she's checking in and suggesting that her parents are having difficulties and that perhaps I should simply go to them and end the matter. She doesn't get to dictate how I should respond since she wasn't the one who was put under the bus, I told her. I was left on red by her. This is when it gets very intense. A call comes in from Lori's school. My parents apparently missed a deadline for some paperwork that I was always in charge of. Since no one is arriving on time, the school wonders if I will still be bringing Lori up on Thursdays. I inform them that although I will manage my own days, I will no longer contact my parents for support. They seem relieved. To be honest, Samantha then made an effort to guilt me. Said that I was making things more difficult than necessary. "I'll do my part for Lori, not for anybody else," I stated. I dropped Lori off and she slammed the door on me. I refrained from pursuing her. After that, my parents arrive at my house like a surprise visit, something they haven't done since I moved. Rain is falling. Dad seems irritated as they stand there together. Mom seems like she's going to pass out. I refuse to let them in. Simply remain in the doorway. Dad thinks we should speak like grown-ups. I express my lack of interest to him. He makes an effort to push past me. I extended my arm. He attempts to smack my hand off of it. I shove him away. Mom claims I'm crushing her heart as she breaks down in tears. "You did that to yourself," I say. She simply shivers as she stands there. I closed the door. After that, every night for a week, it's just a procession of missed calls. It's my mother sometimes, Dad sometimes both, Samantha sometimes. None of them genuinely expresses regret. "It's all fair. Just come over and assist with this, please. Please." Lori longs to be with her family. Don't leave us like they're not even acting, please. It has nothing to do with what they desire. I'm aware that some people would likely argue that I went too far, but I didn't. The thing is this. Throughout my whole childhood, my parents pretended that I was a huge letdown. And as soon as Samantha came around, they felt as though they had at last found a family that made sense to them. She is well organized, she is courteous, she follows the text exactly. I'm not. Naturally, they sided with her when she ran away with Lori. I blame them for treating me like I was disposable, but I don't even blame her for attempting to survive. They did it because they honestly believed that I would always return and that I was too frail to truly cut them off. Joke on them. And now for the final item, the choice that no one anticipated. I removed my name from all of it. I created all of their logins, emergency forms, parent contacts, and joint accounts. Lost. It took several months. I completed it, although it required a lot of customer service. I instructed the school to get in touch with my parents or Samantha if they had any questions, not specifically about Lori and myself. I requested that the bank stop using my information for their payments or mortgage. I told my parents up front that I was completely and permanently out and that I would report them if they attempted to exploit my information again. Dad made an attempt to shout. Mom made an effort to guilt trip. I simply observed both of them sputtering. I gained peace, but it's not like things immediately improved for me. Lori and I meet at my convenience. We visit a park, she goes to grab ice cream with me, family meals are over. No more texts in groups, me and her alone. I let Samantha take care of things if she needs them. I held the line as she made many more attempts to play the for Lori's sake card. Now that she has her own support network, she can find one on her own. My mother never imagined that I would actually go, and she left a lengthy message the last time she phoned emphasizing how important family is. "Just don't leave us," Dad begged over the phone shortly after. I didn't answer. To be honest, I doubt I ever will. So yes, I was referred to as a wreck. These days, I just let the phone ring every night when they call. I'm no longer their tragedy to repair. They want my departure. And at last, I'm gone. Real life, real repercussions. That's all. Story 3. My folks didn't even bother to come get me at the airport when I was 18. I made 12 phone calls following my first semester of college. No response. "We're busy celebrating our brother," my sister remarked when she finally answered the phone. In fact, he took action with his life. My mother texted an hour later, "You want attention. Try not to let people down." I sat by myself on the curb, checked my phone, and asked, "You understand, I will no longer be your afterthought." I carried out a strategy 4 years later that completely altered the situation. My dad sent 37 SMS yesterday. We were mistaken, please. Return. Okay, I don't know whether this is more of a vent or simply something I needed to say, but I never really discussed this topic outside of our group chat. Since everyone claims that their family turmoil is the worst, Angel, the most of my friends simply roll their eyes at it. But this keeps coming up in my mind. Particularly after my dad destroyed my phone last night. I counted 37 texts pleading with me to return home. Not going to happen, haha. Anyway, go back to when I was 18. I recently completed my first semester of college. I had the impression that things may truly start to improve for me. I wasn't a natural prodigy or anything. I received a little scholarship and made it out, which was a start, but nothing special. I couldn't wait to go home. To be honest, on the way back, I even grabbed some stupid airport snacks since I thought maybe my mom would be interested in hearing about my exams or something. Around 3 p.m., the flight lands, and I pass security and make the customary search for your person, but it's just a group of strangers. Couples, parents, anything. You know people with those signs. For a while, I stand there. After about 15 minutes, I'm still standing there with my phone in my hand, trying not to look like a lost child. No missed calls, no texts. I launch the group chat. Nothing. Look at my phone. The battery is still good. I then begin to call. Just one phone call. No response. 3-2. I'm literally just walking past the rental car shuttle with my bag by 6 o'clock, getting to know my people. Continue passing me with that expression that suggests they're attempting to determine whether I'm waiting for someone or have been dumped. I give Sabrina, my sister, a try. Whether it's TikTok or something else, she's usually glued to her phone. Nothing. Try Sergio, my dad. Just straight to voicemail. I hear this little girl next to me say to her, "Mom, why is that guy just standing there?" Kind of wanted the sidewalk to swallow me at that point, but whatever. I keep calling. I'm up to 12 attempts, and I'm now sitting on the curb outside scrolling Insta just to look busy like I meant to be there. A group of college kids walks by laughing, and I feel like the world's biggest idiot. I even texted Wade, my older brother. Not that he ever answers me unless he needs something. Finally, like an hour after I landed, Sabrina actually picks up. I just say, "Hey, where are you guys? I'm outside." She sounds annoyed, like I'm interrupting. She simply goes, "Can't you Uber? We're kind of busy right now." I ask, "Occupied with what?" And she departs. We're commemorating Wade. He actually done anything with his life, you know. Then hangs up. I sat there for a minute, simply holding my phone. I got this SMS from my mom, Marilyn. She actually writes, "You want attention, try not to let people down." She sends it with a thumbs up emoji. I'm not joking. I gazed at that for a minute, just wondering, like, is this a joke? Is this really happening? As I stood there with my duffel bag cold, I watched as other families hugged one another, loaded their children into cars, and got into those pointless arguments over where to eat. I stayed there until the sun began to set, trying to determine whether this was the final straw or whether I was overreacting. In case you were wondering, this isn't an isolated incident. The golden boy has always been Wade. He is 2 years older, played soccer. I learned how to shake hands from my father. Something. Took home prizes every time. My folks are always comparing us, you know. It's not even subtle. Wade is a driven individual. Wade is a leader. Wade is a real estate agent. Though lazy, I'm the clever one. Every time I accomplished something nice, my dad says it was like, "Well, think of what Wade would have done." I was the kid that could have been. It was never the one who showed up. And you know I'm not perfect. I tried, even though I know I can be a bother. This year, I assisted Sabrina with her application, fixed the Wi-Fi when Dad damaged it, and took care of all the minor tasks that no one wanted to do. They simply don't give a damn. You're simply background noise if you're not Wade. My parents hardly even congratulated me when I started college. However, they really arranged a celebration for Wade's big boy job, which is just sales at some random location. I discovered on Snapchat that I wasn't even invited. I finally gave up and hired an Uber when I was seated at the airport. Cost me $40. I wasn't going to wait for someone to notice me even if I didn't have. I couldn't stop thinking about my mom's SMS the entire way home. Wasn't even angry, just finished. When I arrive at the residence, the lights are on. Through the glass I can see. A huge party is in progress. Wade is present. My parents, his pals. I'm laughing. There's music playing. I ring the bell and pull my stuff up the stairs, since my key is no longer with me. A long tale. I misplaced it too many times according to Dad. But whatever. Upon opening the door, my dad gives me a sly smile and says, "Well, look who finally showed up." No embrace, nothing. I enter. Almost no one looks at me. All Sabrina can do is roll her eyes. Wade is obstructing the corridor and chatting loudly about his big deal as I walk to put my suitcase in my room. He gives me a shoulder check when I try to get by him. Not subtle at all. I tell him to get up. He just answers, "Can't you see we're busy?" with a smile. I simply push past him more forcefully than I intend to. He then pushes me back. The bag drops. My belongings are all over the place. I take it up. No one assists, not even Sabrina. From the kitchen, I hear my mother calling. "Could someone please acquire the plates?" She isn't speaking to me, though. She's conversing with Wade's partner. I slam the door of my room after shoving my stuff inside. No one shows up to check. Not even after I scream in rage and kick the wall. I spend some time sitting there looking over old messages, remembering all the times I attempted to get in touch, ask for a ride, or share my scores. Left on red at all times. Too busy all the time. The celebration is coming to an end when I go outside to fetch water later. Half of my dad is watching a game. Wade's phone is scrolling. My mother is tidying up. When I inquire whether there is any food left, my mother simply shrugs and responds that she should have arrived sooner. I simply chuckle, whatever. I head to the refrigerator. Nothing is present. Just your typical takeaway. My dad leaves as I sit at the table. "Lorenzo, not everyone gets a parade just for turning up. Perhaps you'll offer us a cause to rejoice the next time." I simply lost it. I stood up and pushed back my chair. I informed him that I was tired of being ignored, that Wade may be their only child if he is so ideal. My dad gets up, confronts me, and tells me to go if I don't like it. "Perhaps I will," I told him. "Go ahead," he says. "Without us, see how far you can go." I just go out after grabbing my purse and yanking open the door. I left it swinging, at the moment, not even slamming. That evening, I went to a friend's house. On his sofa, he crashed. He didn't really understand. I just said, "Dude, family is tough." I simply nodded. But at that moment, I made a decision. That's all. I am no longer their fallback option. Their emotional punching bag, their free tech support. It's okay if they want to pretend that I don't exist. However, I will no longer remain to be their afterthought. That was the last time I made an effort to gain a place in this family. And I'm not sure what will happen next. I'll tell you what I did when they eventually realized I was gone in the next section. It wasn't simply ghosting, I assure you. They have no idea what is about to happen. One update. Okay, so this is when things started to get more realistic and less depressing. After that fiasco at the airport, I stopped. Nothing much changed right away after that. At home, if anything, things simply became more bizarre. To be honest, it was the minor details that continued to accumulate. Not a single significant event. They seemed to remind me in a different way every week. I was essentially the spare. Yes, I returned to school after winter break, but the situation remained the same when I got home that summer. My mom wouldn't even glance up from her phone when I arrived late from the bus. Sabrina would ask me to put up her new phone or mend her laptop. She also always finds the newest method. Since my senior year, I've been doing the same thing. However, she simply rolls her eyes and accuses me of being selfish if I tell her that I'm busy. She's angry, and I'm practically in the middle of studying for exams. Fixing her TikTok alerts won't require me to give up anything. She can find out her own technology if she continues pounding my door when she's upset, I informed her. Still, she slammed it. In any case, Wade and my dad are sitting in the kitchen chatting about this new thing he's doing when I arrive home late one evening from a friend's house. My dad really stops me when I reach for the water and attempt to dip, saying, "You should take notes from your brother. In fact, he is making a difference in his life." Like as before Wade. As simple as that. Wade simply dismisses it with a shrug. I inform them that I have a scholarship for the next year. Since it saves them money, I figured they would be interested. However, my father just asserts that scholarships are for those who are unable to access genuine chances. Wade chuckles. Well, I just walk out of the room. I find myself spending less time at home. Right now, I'm not even upset. Simply exhausted. I have a part-time job off campus and spend as much time as I can at friends' houses. When the family wants anything mended, Sabrina needs help with her essays, or the Wi-Fi goes out and everyone worries out, they keep bringing me back in even after I start doing my own thing. I return home, repair the router, and depart once more. They hardly express gratitude, if at all. My mom eventually starts saying strange things regarding money like, "You're not the only one who needs help," and "We're not made of it." I hear Mom talking to my dad about how costly Sabrina's activities are, and she suggests that we use Lorenzo's college money and what's left over. When I walk in for water one night, I overhear their conversation, even though I'm not meant to know about it. My dad claims that he hardly uses it anyhow while I stand in the hallway and listen. We might as well give it to someone who will succeed. Even if I'm standing there clumsily and kind of want to barge in, what's the point? This is what they always do. Sabrina is not a moron. Being the youngest and only girl, she is aware that she can get away with murder. Without asking, she begins stealing my belongings, then pretends it doesn't matter. I tell her to stop. "It's not like you ever use it," she replies with a simple shrug. I return my belongings. She gives me an arm slap. I shove her away. She calls out for her mother. My mother just states that males shouldn't make fun of girls. I spend so much time outside the house. Acting like the head of the household, Wade is simply going about his business. My folks love it. He's not even helpful. He simply gives instructions to everyone else. His vehicle breaks down. Wade's level of responsibility is a major point of contention for my dad. However, it is my responsibility to drive him to pick up the part. "No," I reply. "This is what family does," my dad yells at me. "Perhaps you ought to ask Sabrina," I suggest. He shoves me. I push him away. He storms off after slapping the wall next to my head. I simply walk away one more. So, yes. I started keeping a journal of everything I do, including fixing things, helping Sabrina with her schoolwork, and paying bills that someone has forgotten. I include it in my notes. I have no idea why I began doing it. I simply felt like I needed evidence that I wasn't as worthless as they insisted I was. In the event that they claim I didn't pay for anything, I also save my receipts. I suppose I'm being petty, but I'm sick of everyone thinking I'm simply taking advantage of them. The graduation was the true turning point. My pals got me excited, so even though I wasn't planning on walking, I decided to do it for the pictures. I let my relatives know the time, date, and every detail. To give them no excuse, I even send a text message to the group chat the week before. The day after, I'm waiting outside. Furthermore, none of them appear. I don't call Sabrina at all. I send my mother an SMS. She apologizes. Wade had to use the automobile for a crucial task. What could be more significant than my graduation, I wonder? "You're not the only one in this family with a future," she says. I end the call. Returning to my place, I simply sit there. I decide I'm done being their fallback option after reviewing my notes and everything I've done for them. I discover that I've been paying sporadic payments for months when I open my bank app. Even some shipping fees that aren't mine are included in Spotify phone plans. I explain the situation to my roommate. "Bro, you need to start charging them for this stuff," he adds. I chuckle, but then I take action. I'm charging for my time from now on. I text the family group chat. Except for Sabrina, no one responds. "You're so dramatic, no one cares," she adds. I thus cease to assist. Wi-Fi stops working. I don't respond. Sabrina's laptop malfunctions. I just reply, "I don't know, maybe Wade can fix it." My mom's Facebook account is compromised. I simply shrug. They complain to family members about me calling me ungrateful and sluggish. My aunt tells me via SMS that your mother is under a lot of stress. You might be able to assist more. I inform her of the true situation. Provide her screenshots of me assisting Sabrina and paying the bills. Everything. She just gives a thumbs up in response. No one really wants to become involved, I suppose. The strain at home is absurd. Unless they want something, no one speaks to me. Wade tries to steal my automobile one night without my consent. He's in the driveway when I catch him. "No," I tell him. "You owe me for all that I have done for you," he says, like what I ask. He simply loses his temper, hurls my keys at me, and leaves. My dad tries to ground me the next day. I tell him he can't do anything since I'm 20 now. If I don't like it, he advises me to go, so I do. As I head out, I slam the door after packing my stuff. I'm essentially couch surfing right now, living with friends and trying to save as much money as possible. I just go home to get my mail now. I always do. I'm being guilt-tripped by Sabrina. Claims that you are destroying the family. I simply inform her. For once, try solving your own issues. Once more, she slams her door. My mother calls and accuses you of selfishness. When you become older, you'll regret this. I simply end the call. My cousin informs me that my parents are using my education funds to assist with the down payment in the meantime. I arrive at the house and go up to my father. "We make the decisions in this family, not you," he simply states. He attempts to pat me on the shoulder, but I push his arm away. He pushes me away. I don't back down. My mother scolds me for being ungrateful and tells me to stop. I simply chuckle and go. I begin to explain the truth to everyone who would listen. I forward all of my notes, receipts, and other documents to my other family members. At least I know I'm not imagining, even though it doesn't really alter anything. Family members begin calling my parents to inquire about what's happening. They are informed by my mother that I am going through a phase. In any case, by the end of that year, I had a little but personal apartment of my own. Additionally, I inform my family that I am no longer doing anything for them. No technical assistance, no transportation, no cash. They are able to figure out what they desire. One night, Wade tries to phone me, claims that he needs assistance with a crucial matter. I simply left it on voicemail. "I truly need you," Sabrina texts me. I simply respond, "Apologies, busy." You might say that I stopped being their punching bag at that point and began to fight back. I won't tell lies. For once, it felt fantastic, but I wasn't finished yet. They were in for a surprise if they assumed I would just vanish without a trace. I began to plot how to make it truly painful. I'll discuss how I actually began to change things in the next section. It wasn't just about saying no. It was also about making sure they felt the same way I did. Indeed, it became unsightly. To clarify, it wasn't a movie scene that truly triggered my emotions. It was simple, everyday stuff that finally made sense. One day, for example, I was going through the family group chat when Sabrina started yelling at everyone's phones about her laptop not turning on and a paper that was due. She begins repeatedly tagging me. "This is fixed," with all capitals. I simply muffle it. My dad then adds, "Lorenzo, if you can't even support your family, what's the point of going to college?" "It's not that deep, just Google it." Wade interrupts. Not even my mother gets involved. "Can you at least do one thing right this week?" she asks in a separate text message. "Not sure." I basically said, nope, I'm done providing their free tech support at that point. To test whether they would notice, I started slowly. I chose to ignore the texts the first time my home Wi-Fi went off. The group conversation then begins to rage. Dad claims there is no internet. "Make it right, it's your mess." It took me 2 days to respond. Sabrina is seated on the floor as I arrive to pick up some mail. "I'm furious because you caused me to miss a deadline." I suggest that she learn how to reset a router. I duck as she flings a notepad at me. I stop her arm as she attempts to hit my shoulder. She slams the door and storms out. "Why can't you just help your sister for once?" my mother asks. "Why can't she accomplish anything on her own?" I ask. They all pretend that I'm simply being challenging. To be honest, though, it was the first time in years that I felt like I had a voice. I suppose I began to enjoy that sensation, so I continue. "Help is needed for Sabrina's college applications. Simply put, you're intelligent, work things out." She freaks out, but I'm not giving up. Wade asks me to make changes to his resume. I tell him to ask Dad, I'm busy. He becomes enraged and accuses you of being jealous. I'm making progress. I chuckle and walk out of the room. I get nagged by Mom about housework. I inform her that I no longer even call this place home. "That's a good way to go," she says. "After everything we've done for you, you're so unappreciative." "Yeah," I reply. "Like what exactly?" When I start recording everything, the fun really begins. Every time I assist or pay a bill, it is entered into a spreadsheet. I begin to save screenshots, receipts, and anything else. Not for them, for me. I have ammunition then. My mother attempts to tell me one day that you're a waste and never lend a hand. I forward a spreadsheet to her. I'm left unread by her. I start discussing all of this with my cousin June. She is among the few members of the family who truly paid attention rather than only acting as though they did. She advises me to inform everyone of the true situation. After giving it some thought, I begin emailing my mom's sister, my aunt, my spreadsheet, and screenshots, just so the facts are seen by others. My aunt gives me a call. "What's up with Lorenzo?" my mother says. "Paying for things all the time. Why are you trying to make us seem bad?" my mother yells at me. "I'm merely correcting the record," I say. Big news breaks in the group conversation in the meanwhile. Wade moves into a new flat. His family is behaving as though he won the lotto. My parents invite everyone to their celebration for him. The invite list does not include me. Instagram is where I see it. Sabrina uploads photos and adds a caption. Glad for my big brother, I remark. I appreciate the invitation. Wade removes my remark. I send him an SMS. I'm left on red by him. I start making things a little more uncomfortable for them because I'm simply over it now. I enter the family group chat and declare that I will now be billing for my time. Whenever you ask me for technical assistance, it costs $50. I get called a jerk by Sabrina. No one will pay that according to my mother. Your household. Then stop asking, I say. At first they don't take it seriously, but then things start to go wrong in the house. The television goes off. The Wi-Fi is down once more. My dad is having trouble using the printer. Traditional. Sabrina's photographs won't disappear off her phone. The refrigerator is behaving strangely. I simply disregard every call. Wade attempts to fix the television, exacerbates it. My mother calls and offers to give me $20. Simply repair it. It's $50, I say. She ends the call. Then the financial aspects come into play. I send my dad a text saying, "You owe me for the last 4 months," realizing that I'm still on the family phone plan. "Since you use the most data, I assumed you were paying," he explains. "I haven't lived there for a year," I respond. "If you don't pay, I'll change my number." In an attempt to guilt trip me, my dad claims that families should support one another. "Yes, but it's not a one-way street," I reply. When I tell her that she needs reference letters and transcripts, Sabrina becomes anxious about her college-related matters. "Before you slammed my door in my face, you ought to have given it some consideration." "Please, I really need you," she pleads as she calls me in tears. I tell her that if she apologizes and covers my time, I'll assist. She ends the call. I begin explaining the true situation to other family members, sending them the real texts, receipts, and everything else is more than simply ranting. I am believed by some. No one criticizes my parents, but some people think you could be being too severe. In any case, at least they are aware that things get better with Wade. He begins boasting on social media about all of his achievements, but I was responsible for half of them. I edited his essays, created his presentations, and assisted him with his applications. I then begin leaving comments on his posts. It's good to see my efforts paying off. He tells me in a message to quit damaging my reputation. I suggest that he refrain from claiming credit for the efforts of others. I'm blocked by him. When my folks start arriving late, that's the finest part. I used to pay the fees on invoices. I got my mother's call. She is in a panic and claims that the electricity will soon be turned off. Could I please assist? I promise to send her an invoice. She shuts the phone abruptly. I heard it. My dad texted me and said, "You're being ridiculous. Your family is this." I simply left things alone. June tells me that my parents are now arguing over me and that I'm destroying the family, that I've evolved, that. June just comments that perhaps they ought to have given you better treatment. I chuckle. I then get quite petty. I review all of my shared accounts, including those with my family Netflix music plan, food delivery logins, and other things in addition to my expenses. I send them a note saying, I'm not paying anymore. They can either remove me or reimburse me. No, they don't. I thus create new accounts for myself, delete my information, and reset all of my passwords. Sabrina loses it and accuses you of ruining the movie night. Perhaps it's time for a new pastime, I suggest. One day, my dad says, "Let's talk man to man," and attempts to come over to my house. I open the door. He attempts to intervene. He is blocked by me. He touches my chest with his hand. I ignore it. "You're acting like a stranger," he replies angrily. I tell him that I become an outcast because of you. He attempts to make me feel guilty. In his face, I just shut the door. Thus, yes, no longer was it simply about not assisting. Making them experience what it's like to be exploited, disregarded, and treated as like you don't matter was the goal. I made sure they experienced every hardship, every panic attack, and every inconvenience. I was no longer their safety blanket for once. And they were desperate as soon as they truly began to feel it. The transition from trivial to serious occurs next. I'm referring to real repercussions, not only annoyance. Let me explain how I ensured they would never be able to rely on me again, and how it affected them more profoundly than any quarrel or slammed door could. The last update. I have always assumed that the major drama in families was reserved for dirty stories or TikTok tirades. However, real life might pull you into it at times. Making no contact and acting as though they didn't exist was never the only goal of this section. Making sure they felt the mess they created was the goal. Everything financially, emotionally, etc. To be honest, they deserved every moment. The strangest thing was that despite all that was happening, everything appeared normal from the outside. I would watch Sabrina's Instagram story where she would upload old vacation photos and act like an influencer, making everything seem like it was perfect. Wade continues to boast about his connections and flex about his victories on Facebook. My parents were pretending like the family is close by doing those awkward couple pictures, but the group chat was a complete mess. Someone gets angry every week. Bills are not paid. Wi-Fi is not working. Nobody is able to perform simple tasks. All I did was watch it burn. When college assistance season arrived, it was the first significant shock for them. My mother calls and warns that if you don't identify us as your support on your applications, Sabrina's financing would be affected. I declare that I am not providing any family assistance. I'm not getting aid from you. Why should I assist you? She becomes very upset and accuses you of destroying your sister's future. Perhaps you need to have considered it before depleting my college funds for the huge down payment, I remark. She screams when she calls back after hanging up. I silence her. Later that week, my dad calls me. He makes an effort. "Let's be reasonable," says the phony, calm voice. "You don't want to cause the family any more hardship. You never gave a damn about making my life difficult," I tell him. "Do not begin now." He attempts to make me feel guilty. Claims that you are destroying us. No, I just won't be tidying up your mess any longer. He says I should mature. I end the call. "I really need help with my internship applications," says Sabrina, trying to fit in all the lovely things. "Please, I'll reimburse you. For all of the writings I wrote, I think you still owe me." "That was different," she says. "My brother is you." "Not anymore," I say. She blocks me for a week after sending me a weeping emoji. But Wade is the funniest. Suddenly, he begins texting me and says, "I need your help with this reference. It's crucial. Please don't ruin this for me." I just ask him for assistance with the timings by sending him a snapshot of every text message he has ever sent me. He never reimbursed me. "You're acting like a child," he says. "I advise you to solve it on your own." Huge shot. He becomes enraged, accuses me of being a self-centered failure, and then attempts to blame me by claiming that family supports family. "You stated that when you stole my college funds, don't you think I'm left on red by him?" I then do what irritates them the most. I send everyone a single large group email. My aunt, parents, Wade, Sabrina, and even a few low-key relatives. I assumed I was being overly sensitive. I lay everything out. All of it screenshots, monetary figures, receipts. I claim to have been the fallback option for the past 4 years. The one that is unseen. The man who repairs everything but receives nothing in return. I declare myself finished. Don't ask me for anything I say. Avoid making a call. If you're not prepared to reimburse me for every penny and favor, don't text me. Everything. I copied everyone, just to make sure it doesn't spin. My mother attempts to call. I don't answer. "Wow," my aunt texted me. I had no idea it was that way. I simply respond. "You do now. The consequences are outrageous." Her inability to complete the paperwork correctly causes Sabrina's scholarship to be delayed. "I hope you're pleased," she texts me. I may get kicked out. I just suggest that you spend that time learning how to accomplish things on your own. Once more, she blocks me. When an HR representative phones Wade to confirm his joint projects, his job begins to question him. I also don't support his claims. Just state that I did my share and not his. I don't lie. He yells at me. I don't respond. June informs me that Wade's references didn't match, which prevented him from getting promoted. Late fines, tax issues, and odd expenses began to pile up for my parents. "We never knew how much you done," my mother tells me in a text message. I don't respond. My dad makes an attempt to visit my residence. I'm not joking. Knocks on my door. I crack it open. He makes an effort to push past me. I push him away. "Don't tell him about your house. You can't just shut us off," he says. "We are related." I tell him that when you sent me off at the airport, you made your decision. He attempts to give me a smack. He is blocked by me. Shut the door. The extended family turning on is the real kicker. In the family gathering, my aunt criticizes my mother, claims that you were indifferent to Lorenzo. What were you anticipating? My mother exits the conversation. Sabrina shares mysterious posts regarding phony individuals. Wade takes a month off from blogging. These days, it's not even about the money. Making them live with what they've done is the goal. Each time, they need to solve a problem. Every time Wade needs to go to work, every time Sabrina misses a deadline, or every time a bill is late, they recall the people who used to govern their lives. I'm not there either. In other words, my dad sent 37 consecutive messages last night. I'm not even being dramatic. I tallied everything starting with, "Please come home." We also apologize. "You're also hurting your mother's feelings. Don't treat us like this." I didn't respond to any of them. He made 2 calls. All I did was watch it ring out. I occasionally reflect about the airport curb, the cold, and the length of time I waited. How they saw me as nothing more than background noise. They are the ones that are waiting now. I'm also not returning. Since I don't feel sorry for them, I won't express that. They didn't trust me when I told them what would happen. They do now. That's the tale then. Do you seek retribution? This is how it seems. It's nasty, slow, but well worth it. My only regret, I suppose, is that I didn't do it sooner.